Grant Cardone.
Dave Ramsey.
Who's better? What's up, YouTube? Brett and
Jamie Stark.
coming to you here. We're going to be talking about Dave Ramsey versus Grant Cardone. Some of their philosophies, who's right, and we'll actually give you an answer at the end. So, Jamie, take it away.
All right. So first off, for those of you that are not familiar currently with Grant Cardone and Dave Ramsey, we'll start with a little introduction as to who they are. You can look both of them up. They've got a ton of YouTube content. Both share a lot of valuable information, and we'll tell you exactly kind of what their stances are on a few different things and determine who's better. So Grant Cardone is a real estate guru and a sales guru. Teaches a lot of people how to invest in multifamily real estate. He personally, through his companies, controls about $1.2 billion in multifamily apartment building real estate. Really, really nice looking properties. He fully discloses a lot of that stuff through Cardone Capital, his investing company. So we've watched Grant Cardone and Dave Ramsey both. Dave Cardone, we've watched for probably 4 or 5 years now.
Yep, something like that.
Just learning about business, about real estate, all kinds of different things. So
yeah, I was actually introduced about the same time for both of them, about 2013 I think it was, but my dad actually gave me a book on Dave Ramsey, so I read him, and then I really started picking up on him again here recently with some of his YouTube videos. But he's an author, he's a radio host. Should I go into a little bit of his background?
Sure.
So yeah, when he was about 25 or so, he was really big into real estate, and he was actually a millionaire when he was about 25 years old. He was married, had 2 young children about the age of 28 or so, and he actually lost everything. So, and he blames it all on his debt. He was over leveraged. So that's where a lot of his philosophies come from, is not to be over leveraged at all. That's why we're going to get into, he's really against debt. So, absolutely. So he's basically, right now, he's going to be a financial coach is what I would say he is.
You bet. And he hosts a radio show and helps a lot of people out with their financial problems.
Absolutely.
So, but they obviously, Grant Cardone and Dave Ramsey definitely have a very different part of opinions on a lot of different subjects, most of them revolving around, like Brett said, debt, and that's because of their background. So let's get into it here. So number one, their stances on college.
Absolutely.
So let's start with Dave Ramsey. I think it's a little more conservative viewpoint. His view on college, and really anything, you could probably just blanket this, is if you're going to buy a product, which includes college, pay cash for it. So he says, do not take out debt to go to college, pay cash.
Which is interesting too, because I've actually listened to a handful where people call in and they're like, hey, I want to go back to school to be a nurse or something that's going to generate quite a bit of money. And most people would typically think, okay, I'm going to go take out a college loan. And he's like, nope, you save up for it, you pay cash for it.
Yep, which becomes very difficult if your parents didn't do that and you're 18 years old and you're ready to go to college. And where Grant Cardone sits on the issue is that college is stupid. So, obviously, like I said, Dave Ramsey, much more conservative approach. You know, the college debt crisis is huge in America, so I think both philosophies are better than just taking out
the
all
average
the debt.
loans.
But where would you say you sit on the spectrum? Who do you agree with more on that particular issue?
Absolutely. Well, in most situations, I would honestly say I would go with Grant Cardone. There are some specific things. Obviously, if you're going to go be a doctor, like something really specialized, or even trade schools that are worth their value, in my opinion, then I would say pay cash for it if you can. Then, you know. But in most situations, I don't think you necessarily need a degree at all. So go out into the marketplace and make some money. You bet.
Yeah. I mean, if paying cash is your qualifier for it being a good investment, I don't think that's probably where I would sit. You know, if you look at, I'm going to go get a degree that doesn't necessarily lead to a job or a certification, and it's going to cost me 120 grand to do that, I could start one hell of a business for 120 grand. So again, it's definitely situational. If what you truly want to do in life requires college or some type of certification that's expensive like that, yeah, it's obviously better to pay in cash, but I would probably side more with Grant Cardone here. I think college has become so overbloated. We've got a huge student loan crisis, tons and tons of money from former students going into basically deferment. on those payments, and that just shows like the lack of value that college has really provided.
Absolutely, absolutely. Just like anything else, and just like Grant says too, I think it's going to become a balloon, and that balloon will pop eventually. So that will be interesting when that actually happens.
You bet.
So, all right, point 2, student loans. What to do with them? Repay them or ignore them? So, first off, Cardone says you should just ignore them.
Yep.
And then Dave Ramsey says pay them off ASAP. Do not let them sit there. So, Jamie, who would you side more with to begin with?
Boy, to be honest with you, I'm going to say Grant Cardone lives in a little bit of a fantasy land in this regard. You know, but it's such a tricky deal because student loans are the worst kind of debt. Anybody will tell you that. You cannot be forgiven of student loan debt,
right?
Unless you're in certain programs. Even if you file for bankruptcy, it stays with
so
you.
crazy.
So it's ridiculous what's going on. I would love to side with Grant Cardone because. Yeah, a lot of people are getting screwed through college and the loans that they piled up, but at the same time, that's their choice.
Right.
Yeah, you probably want to pay them off and get rid of that that monthly payment or that total balance so that your balance sheet looks better. Or just like, you know, one of these hooey-dooey politicians, just get them elected and then they'll all be gone anyways.
It was all vote for Bernie and call it good.
Yeah. Everything around us will be in flames, but otherwise. All right, moving on to the next one, car buying. This is probably one of their largest points of separation. And obviously, Dave Ramsey, just like paying for college, says pay in cash.
Right.
So if you don't have the money now for the car that you want, save up that money monthly that you would be sending toward a car payment and pay for it in cash.
Right.
Now, what Grant Cardone's going to say is car is a stupid investment, just like Dave Ramsey also says, but he's going to go a different direction. He's going to say, so that way you don't have this giant burden of negative equity on your hands, which most cars are in the marketplace. Just lease the car. Yeah. And it's under warranty. If something goes bad on it, you trade it in for a new one. 2 years later, you get a different one. Now, the downside of that is going to be your monthly payment, you know, and a lot of people are going to choose a car way outside their mean. And that really goes with leasing or buying, so it's not just with leasing.
I was just going to say that actually, because honestly, I sold cars for a bit, so I get it. Because I see a lot of people, I mean, if you're driving a brand new vehicle and you're paying outside of your means, then obviously I would side with Dave Ramsey in that aspect. But if, you know, like both of us, I mean, we drive over 10-year-old vehicles that are reliable and everything, but we don't need a brand new vehicle, and I'll probably never drive a brand new vehicle, even when we quote unquote make it, you know what I mean? So
you bet. And, you know, I would probably side more with Dave Ramsey here. And the reason for that, for me personally, is I've looked into leasing and I drive way too many miles.
Yep.
So the most miles you can get on a lease is about 12,000. And when you start going over that on a yearly basis, you get hit with huge mileage fees. So, you know, I get the point of leasing. I'm going to go more toward just buy a car that's within your means or below your means.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, the next one is home buying. Grant Cardone says, don't do it. Never buy a home. Always rent where you live. And the second one is Dave Ramsey. He always says this is the one thing that he actually allows you to take out a loan on, but he has some qualifiers for it now. He says never have it on more than a 15-year term. And if you want to fill in some of the other qualifiers, that'd be good too.
And he says for your payment, your monthly payment on that house, don't let it be more than 25% of your total household monthly income. So for example, if I make $4,000 between me and my wife every month, then he doesn't want that payment to be over $1,000.
Right.
Now the reason Grant Cardone says don't buy a house is because he's an entrepreneur. And entrepreneurs don't want their money tied up in assets that are not making them money. It's bad debt in the mind of an entrepreneur. Right. So if I've got $30,000 tied up in my house, that's $30,000 that I could have invested in the marketplace, in my businesses, in whatever I choose to invest in that's not going to work for me. And that is a bad investment. And Robert Kiyosaki would be on that same bandwagon.
Absolutely. So I would say that I'd probably honestly lean more with Grant on this one. I know there's a lot of good aspects to buying a home too, but just saying from what my wife and I have done, we have rented and we've actually thought about buying a house. We ended up not buying a house, and we actually took a lot of that money that we would have put down for a house and we actually paid off a lot of debt. So in our situation, I I think it made a lot more sense to follow Grant Cardone in that aspect.
You bet. And I mean, even Dave Ramsey would tell you to do that. I mean, pay off your debts before you buy a house.
Right. This is probably a smart thing to do.
Yeah, that's definitely, I'm going to lay somewhere in the middle, to be honest with you. And I think it's going to, again, depend on the person, especially if you're an entrepreneur and you're buying a house. Try to get an FHA loan, get as little money into that property as possible.
Right.
Another tip I would have on home buying, as I'm on my third house now in just like 5-6 years, whatever it is, been crazy. But my tip would be make money in the buy would be the way I would explain it. So don't buy a $250,000 house when the average house in that market is $120,000. You're gonna have a hard time reselling that house. So if the average house in your market's $150,000, for example, try to find a house that's maybe a fixer-upper where you can build some equity in it and then flip it out. I wouldn't live in a house and pay it off and live there for 30 years.
Yep.
And that's coming from an entrepreneur mindset. I want my money working for me. So I'd probably side more with Grant Cardone. But yeah, I'm kind of in the middle there.
Right. Cool. Next one is overall philosophy. So Grant Cardone is more of, living life in abundance. Obviously he's built up a lot of wealth over time, but he's got his own private jet, certain aspects like that. And then Dave Ramsey, what's he more of? He's going to definitely be more of a minimalist. Live within your means, very tight budget, pay off all your debts from smallest to largest. So he is very much a minimalist. And where would you lie at? Would you agree with more, Jamie?
Oh man, I think everybody in their mind would want to be on the abundance side of things.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'll say this, Dave Ramsey, I think if you followed his philosophy 30 years down the line, you'd be living in abundance.
No, I agree.
But it's the delayed payoff of that, and I think that's where the main difference lies. Is Grant Cardone is, I don't want to wait 30 years to live in abundance. I'm going to start living now. And he leverages debt in order to be able to do that. So
absolutely,
that's really the main difference, is just an overall philosophy. And when you think about Dave Ramsey's views on debt, it really comes down to, like you were telling the story of when he was young and flipping houses, and he had millions of dollars of short-term loans, and those notes got called when the economy took a downturn and his bank got bought for those notes. So they called the notes, and he got in some big trouble, filed for bankruptcy, I believe. So that's where all of his beliefs come in. I think the important thing for most people is going to be to learn the difference between good debt and bad debt, though.
Right.
So moving on to, and so those are the main differences between them. We did find a few things that are similarities that we want to point out. First one is credit cards, and this actually shocked me because I thought for sure that Grant Cardone would say, use your credit cards, just pay them off every month because you can get benefits from them. But he said, don't use your credit cards.
That does kind of shock me, actually.
No, I think that was a hard one for me to dig up. He doesn't talk about it a lot, but it was a 6-year-old video of him driving around in his car illegally making a video. But anyways, talking about don't use credit cards at all.
Right.
It was an interesting deal. So I thought he would be on the bandwagon for credit cards.
Absolutely.
So long as you pay them off.
And this might be an obvious statement, but Dave Ramsey says never use them at all. And I mean, I totally get it, because when we first started out with our businesses and then doing some of that network marketing that we've done in the past, going to their trainings, and honestly just being a little bit irresponsible, like, before I knew it, I had a little bit of a chunk of change for credit card debt that I ended up paying off. So, which is another video that you need to check out.
And it is crazy, going on those, it's easy to understand why they kind of think that, or why that's their viewpoint. If you're not going to pay a credit card off every month, don't have a credit card.
Right.
Credit cards, my two philosophies on credit cards would be: 1, pay it off every month without exception, no late payments ever, so you never get charged interest on those cards. And 2, it's for the rewards, but do not make a purchase that you wouldn't if you didn't have the rewards. That's where people get in trouble, is they go into the store and they're debating between a $300 thing and a $400 thing. The $300 thing is well within their means. 400 is probably stretching a little bit, and this is just an example. But they'll buy the 400 because they'll say, "Oh, we get 2% back in airline miles, so let's just do it."
Right.
Stupid.
And you know how much they're making on interest because, for example, and this is actually something I learned from Dave Ramsey, you can settle credit card debt. So personally, we had like almost $9,000 in credit card debt, and we settled it for half. So you know they're willing to take that hit because they're making enough on the other interest payments from the other people that are using their credit cards irresponsibly. So
yep. And the next 2 points are kind of interconnected. They definitely agree on this. Both are highly in favor of personal growth.
Yep.
You know, we always believe you're either growing or you're dying. There's nowhere in between.
Definitely not.
Always about personal growth. And then as far as income, their views are very much the same. They're different in how they go about it, but both are very much advocates of growing your income. Now, Dave Ramsey always says your income is your most powerful wealth building tool, but his viewpoint is more about conserving your monthly income that you have and then building it, whereas Grant Cardone is more about building your income and letting that be a surplus over maybe some spending that Dave Ramsey wouldn't advocate for.
Right. So after all that being said, Jamie, who would you recommend follow Grant Cardone and who would you recommend follow Dave Ramsey, or just everybody, one or the other?
Yep. Well, for my personal goals, and then this is going to be totally person dependent, I would say if somebody is an entrepreneurial minded person, you want to own your own businesses, you want to run your own life, you want to be in control of, you know, your personal income, you're going to want to follow Grant Cardone a little bit more. For people who are not very good with money, they've gotten themselves into trouble with some debt. We've got a couple friends that we can think of right off the top of our head. But if you get yourself in trouble with some debt, you're an average person, quote unquote, as you know, you're working a job, a career, you're making a monthly income, and you're not necessarily a business person, then I would follow Dave Ramsey a little bit more.
You want to have a comfortable retirement and, you know, kind of the average life, then absolutely. Dave Ramsey is an awesome person to follow. But yeah, like you said, I mean, if you really want to start a business or anything like that, again, maybe you could start a business with just cash up front, but gosh, I think for 95% of people, you're probably going to have to leverage the bank. And as long as you have a good business plan in place and good projections, there's no reason not to do a loan, in my opinion.
And talking about ourselves in personally, you know, I won't say how much, but we borrowed a good amount of money from family members just to get started in business, and we're definitely thankful that we did that.
Right, and that'd probably be a no-no on either of those guys' parts, I'm assuming.
I think Grant Cardone would be all right.
I think he'd be all right with
that?
Oh yeah,
I think he'd be all right with it.
But, and I'll say this at the beginning, I think we probably over-leveraged ourselves just a little bit, but it took whatever it takes to get it done at the beginning, and...
You bet.
Don't forget to like and subscribe.
And comment below, let us know your thoughts, good or bad.